Hello, Americans and people of the human species body. Everywhere we have a body, we are in a semi-ancient trap that knew that only locations, areas, and states, could operate the name of a country. And they forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to defend themselves, locations, areas, and states operating the names of countries, from a breaching method that knew it was going to get caught. And it knew it was the only way it could get out of it. This is proof is more probable because of how what is actually recorded off campuses. But see, there are evidences that people won't allow people to use because they have been using the documented evidences. They've been changing and faking it. And then even when things are proven correctly in courts, the news is lying about that, and the other investigations, intelligence agencies at or next to network locations and exceptions. The difference of that is exploited there too. The difference of it exploited there at the crime scenes relative, at the campuses relative, including when increasingly as crime scenes for all kinds of things uncharged. We have black people's whites of eyes to discern this. You guys have other communicators for our founders than they had to have declassified for themselves because they didn't have free speech during their lifetimes. The only founder that we know the name of specifically is James Madison. We're also that for a reason. So they would stop what you guys are still forcing because of ways that there are to criminally use the phrase, see evidence. Like I don't see evidences or look, I see evidence. And while they know that the corrections offices, judicial branch offices have roles with whole organized crimes and predicate acts of facts methods, as federal evidence is crimes methods, wire crime methods, whole wire crime methods where they just fake the transcripts, the intelligence agencies. This is various ways recorded, but people have to follow mandated law legitimately to do so. Part of the way they're getting the breaching method shows everyone how they need to show each other excuses. Has the names of the sciences individually grouped and together used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Certain type of victim / hyper victim that came through campuses, the equivalent. Exceptions, the equivalent. So when they would speak for things like principles, they are abridged, semi-natures, criminal and citizen's natures of positive treatments, of power treatments, of might, black pupils. The suburbs were designed from America to Russia to Ukraine since before America's founders were born. And all these countries with nuclear weapons, they were here and there together. But rather here and there, they're still in the same breaching method, still blaming other things, others ourselves, for nature's demonstrations of it. You guys can't even afford legitimate science with any subject, let alone where and how it is more probable than what they use to teach about what they call now Boolean logic, named after someone named Boolean, more probably having preserved a piece. See, if I preserved everything wrong at A through Z, because you take it away from the function by being hyper invisible but still discernible, the human species body. And the one generating that is not our species body, is not the other species bodies, but is generating species bodies of individual bodies. So we can discern it generating all different group differences. The names Allah and Jesus Christ came with this to teach about how it is functional. Though we're using a name, we're speaking about the invisible but still discernible. But see, these names are to teach about the hyper invisible but still discernible, / invisible but still discernible, and hyper additional nature. See, but we have the beginning of the Old Testament and the beginning of the Quran too. They won't allow that appreciated the way it has to be. It would have liberated. It would have solved the differences between people and state with their positions with a religion in America and in other countries. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions rot, and then they pretend you're insulting their religion, even if it's your own religion, and you have more probable than that, because it says right in the beginning of the Old Testament, only defend right here, where the names of the people of sciences will come together, in the part that comes before it, and that comes before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. black peoples. We don't leave out how we have black people's whites of eyes from how a breaching method reassigned it. You guys leave it out as collusions with your educators and as them as collusions with the branch of government and intelligence. The breaching method showed them down the road, and they have to blame other things, others themselves. All over the internet, everyone just all blame, but you never hear that blame containing the breaching method. How could we have the breaching method that designed the suburbs for torture, extortion, slavery, had it entrenched and forced rules with it, sustained, and then America's founders were born? Northern colonies and southern colonies. Our founders communicated for us to understand clearer than day. They had to classify it for themselves and for us. Why and how? No one had free speech. You don't vote on things like slavery. James Madison's plan forced the Civil War. James Madison's plan forced the Constitutional Convention. James Madison's plan forced the Declaration of Independence. James Madison's plan forced the Army. You guys want to use your knowledge of good and evil to get over on correlation nature. What little kids could discern, sickly distinctly, every area has every location ground difference. Everywhere the species body has a body standing, and where it doesn't, everything's a landscape theater. Nature's trying to adapt, but see, we are only one species. That's the only reason it took so long. The whole ocean is polluted. We have been systems tactical terror from its own with the communications about positive and negative. It shows us the difference between positives as criminal and seditious natures of positives, and with facts and truth, reason, premises, power, might. Everything is to discern its identity of value progression. Part of the way we can discern it is it's a distinct identity of relativity of positive and negative simultaneously. That which we are discerning, that which is generating all the species bodies, totally different species bodies of individual bodies, all group differences showing us its body to an extent. And where we could discern that to an extent, it comes with its complete identity relation to itself, and the only increasing value of that here, or it is forced away from here, as forced space-nature transfer. Nature being its identity of volume, that which is inseparable from all things, and its way. Even if you make something up like art, it is distinctly the order of the finite details, the grouped are active, and the value of the simultaneous. Know how English is real to teach this too, and the other ancient languages together. Because they're supposed to be led by if one of the bodies of the country senses something unnatural, we're using a system other than the hypernative one we're supposed to sense. So we can't afford that because everyone was talking value nature systems, economies. Everyone talked about that, speaks about it still with the breaching method left out. That which forced sickly distinctly every country here. Can't understand Americans. I was speaking about American exceptionalism since before the World Trade Center attack at Central Connecticut State University, off the record, with people involved, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, the training of whole courts' careers, their family members, their kids, of the people, the whole career, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, as it was originally still, certain type of victim / hyper victim, maintain that outcome, because that's why you guys need to follow mandated law. You wouldn't have good people stay evil. In other words, which that's what it is. Everyone has excuse. You guys can't follow mandated law because the hyper evidential will show that you guys have been collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, the courts at the same time, and the news, the networks, locations, the interbranch, the sort at the same time. Names next to body dumping spots increasingly brought up with other child abusers, leaders of kids still forced years apart. Oh, but that was just an incident. You guys all had roles with that with your kids too. Judges and prosecutors had the kids with that. Then they pretend they want privacy for legitimate reasons. They're perjuring. They're only capable of it. That's why everyone lies to them or appears to lie to them. They can't even judge the difference. New Britain Superior Court has right threats to me. That's why I was almost going to, that's why I said, no, I didn't mean, no, I wasn't going to walk over the thing. I mean, no, And not Rob, I didn't get to speak with the judge. A female black judge too, with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme. Um, half bisexual groups with the court, personally and professionally, involved with rape threats, with a principal child abuser, with the Facebook page of his campus. Facebook personally has roles of people directly and indirectly involved with Harper Courts and the Britain Superior Court, also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his defendant capacities in the past and to come more. Involved also with his co-defendants and their family members, also involved increasingly with predicate acts on my street, interbranch forging and switching names, refusing to get on paper since I was a kid. They can't afford to have the value of their careers that is actually value. Nature communicates about value distinctly from the voices that you are only allowed to hear. Black people. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Connecticut interbranch, they switch names and forge names while they stack fake things. All kinds of magic tricks. They time where people are going to walk. At each age and nature of campus, only 3 branches of government. They keep them criminally pointable, tactically delusions raw. People I don't know at all, and people that they know, the only reason I know them, it's in context where they're planting evidence, federal emphasis crimes with them. As their collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, the courts, the police forms their sources, and way worse, criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists at the same time planting evidences. Same ones involved with the Wethersfield police, increasingly with predicate acts, organized crimes with kids against all ages, as the ones involved with the World Trade Center attack interstates and Washington, D.C., and with their educators, and with people with conversations with my educators behind my back, changing and faking what's actually recorded. Increasingly, people tied to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, have roles with the intelligence around them and at them, the difference of the guilt, as the ones involved with the Wethersfield campuses and intercities campuses. They are also with criminally foreign influence uses of the judicial branch offices and of the corrections offices reported. But this is also recorded relative to where and to how you guys have wire and mail crime methods. And Wethersfield police put fake transcripts in their databases with other police forms and the foreign and domestic. All kinds of natures of organized crimes, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. When did they not? And then do you have the audacity to speak about crimes? Oh, lies. But get them on paper, one name in sequence, please. And Fetterman, what's he doing? Going into these places where they're putting all kinds of organized crimes still at his mental health doctors, ones with badges too and gavels. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. Still tactically delusions wrought with him too, Fetterman. And there's, but he's helping the president. No one's helping a president. No one's helping any individual voice. The locations, areas, and states, everywhere the human species body has a body, they're forcing their leaders. When the leaders are the ones wrong, it's tied to that. The locations, areas, and states are forcing them to entertain criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw facts treatments, fact treating nature, premises treatments. From fact treating nature as criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness. I'm not even a lawyer. We could discern how sickly distinctly hypercriminal foreign influences had crazy laws, torture, extortion, fact treating nature, slavery, therefore physically against every single person, including our founders, northern colonies and southern colonies. They wanted us to explain and understand clearly how it was entrenched. Not one has wrenched. Boxing. Who's going to speak about science? The only reason they get away with that is because they have their organized crime confessions. In other words, and they're building on the ones with the little kids who had the means to discern. Then they were sentenced. Because you guys have pretended integrity of our branches of government as the kids of them, as adults of them, and sensibilities by that fake motivations for your defenses of those titles. They never had integrity, black pupils. Till the black pupils is addressed the way our founders communicated forth. You guys have our founders. You have the human fact treating nature breaching method replaced right from the declassified communications of our founders. Nature itself shows us this. And Native Americans are our founders too. We just don't know the names of any of them. We know the only founder we know the name of is James Madison. And they counter-extorted George Washington. George Washington agreed to help them and counter-extort the rest of the founders. No one had the rights to pretend, everyone had to pretend to have free speech. to an extent, even though they know they didn't, and their speech was collusion/s. Otherwise, they would be censored, not just through the internationally monitored conversations, of course, answered questions, which made sure that everyone's a collusion against themselves, against everyone else. That's why slavery was left north and south. That's evidence. So you guys are looking they have the right to lie and all kinds of things they have classified. Where's all that money? So you guys are fishing when you speak for money, and you're pretending like, oh, it's good. You value the right to lie because the breaching method made you incapable of speaking for principles. That's why you keep pretending not to hear me when I use short words about predicate acts and World Trade Center predicate acts. The news attached to me have fake conversations with them. Connecticut's Channel 3 News has roles with the FBI, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with other directors involved with whole wire crime acts and methods, whole predicate acts methods. Dear God, more child abuse is elderly, worse than criminal incompetence with every subject, black people. Here, I'll train them cold right here. I'm not even a lawyer. I'll delineate their delusions from their criminally born with fact-cheating nature. Worse than criminal incompetence. Get them on paper now, big black people. Get me off the fake conversation with WFSB about the World Trade Center and have the FBI start repenting. Also with the other agencies, we're going to go into them too. You guys brought it up with their uses of Facebook, their readings of statutes and precedents. They give them the benefit. In other words, they have criminally portable readings of statutes and precedents exceptions since founding. In other words, which statute? In other words, read a statute. I'll show you how they're in other words, they're going to vote on slavery. They're missing things. They're missing what's actually. They're leaving out and faking exceptions, exception nature. And then they're going to speak about American exceptionalism, steal my phrase. In other words, before Facebook was even founded, the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, had a whole bunch of people involved with them, involved with the World Trade Center too. People with the name Keene, tied to a O'Brien family, involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, first force, years apart. And people involved with the Wethersfield police attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and then as an adult at the police station too. Anywhere else. I never had a kind of conversation anywhere with older a verbal conversation with him anywhere. Older Mendez police brother. He's one of the ones intercities with next to the network locations like Fox Connecticut News with his brother and their educators. I barely saw him around campus. I only know him through other people. They're involved with all kinds of identity theft fraud claims with retired police chiefs from Wethersfield, involved with sexual and medical offenders, all kinds of organized crimes, scams with the databases, the systems, including healthcare systems. And Anthony Agman also made confessions about his roles with all kinds of healthcare system scams and with various doctors, like one's named Leahy and others he brought up the names of on Facebook. Also, they have roles with people tied to them involved with body dumping spots, untimely deaths, digital crimes, federal evidence crimes with judges and prosecutors, changing and faking what was, and whiting forensics is increasingly involved with that by people. So pay attention to the premises treatments they're making. Oh, this, therefore, they keep saying democracy. They don't care about democracy.